Okay, cool. Yeah, I guess we'll start with saying that, yeah, I just kind of came up with this topic, like randomly and just signed up for this like 2 days ago. So I haven't ever dry run this, and I literally made this presentation in about like 3 hours. So try to bear with me. I'll see what I can do. But I guess what I'm trying to present here is practical steps towards basically a post-industrial manufacturing economy, the way we could do it today versus how it was done in the past, I guess. So basically, I'm going to try to go through how manufacturing will work, you know, in today's economy where we have great networks, AI, great manufacturing, localized technology, as opposed to what we did with post-manufacturing before, where we just tended to offshore everything and then just become an imported society. Okay, so I'm going to go through introduction and objectives. I'm going to go through what I think reinventing the post-manufacturing economy would be. Some of the technological shifts and innovation that would be able to drive this. Some economic diversification that could happen along this. Some of the effects of globalization versus localization. Focusing on some of the sustainable benefits that could be done here. Some of the power dynamic shifts that could take place. Basically some of the advanced manufacturing investments that would need to be made, both on small levels and then maybe on larger levels. Then talk about a little bit of workforce and training stuff. Talk about some digital transformation, how some of the networks would be maintained and what we'd have to do to small and medium-sized businesses. Talk about a little bit of global competitiveness and then some Q&As. Okay. All right. Yeah, so devaluation of manufacturing sector and its consequences have been a disaster for North American societies. Yes, yeah, you got that one. Okay. Anyways, yeah, so we have brittle supply chains. We have a weakened middle class, in my opinion, and the loss of knowledge and expertise and ability to know how to make things, I think, has given a lot of people, it's left them without a sense of purpose, you know. And I think in a new post-manufacturing economy with the tools that we have today, I think we could kind of maybe fix this, okay? So what I think some of the current fears are in today's general society, you know, there's some trade wars going on. During COVID, a lot of the supply chains were broken, okay? There's a need for local work, and there's a need for basically security of plagiarism and information, you know, your ability to hold your information. Some of the emerging trends that are also maybe allowing this shift in power is the technology that we all have at our fingertips, how cheap it is, the fact that we have better networking and transferring of knowledge. I think a lot of people are starting to focus locally versus globally, and I think there's a lot of small custom solutions that are cheap and affordable that could drive this change. Okay. So here I got a few different examples of traditional post-industrial and what I'm proposing is new post-industrial. Okay. So shift to services and information. So predominantly it was there was a dominance. So basically, you know, if we look at Great Britain, people moved towards healthcare, finance, education, and IT. I think in new post-industrial, we could actually also add creative jobs in local trade. So before there was traditionally a decline in traditional manufacturing jobs, I think we could change big manufacturing jobs to community manufacturing. So there was always an emphasis on technological innovation in traditional and new. Before it was a focus on R&D, automation, AI, and big data. I think we can do that, but I also think we can do that on a community level versus a big tech level. So there was innovation as primary growth driver. I think we can also have craftsmen be a predominant driver in new post-industrial. Globalizational impact. So there used to be an outsourcing of manufacturing to low-cost countries. I think what we could do is use small automation to do insourcing and then start opening up small digital marketplaces. People focus predominantly on their homes, their design, and their branding. I think we could also focus on community design projects in a new post-industrial system. So there was a focus on a knowledge-based workforce in traditional post-industrial, demand for higher education and specialized skills. I think we can do that, but also keep craftsmanship and more community involved with the new post-industrialized economy. Um, so intellectual property was a key asset. I think we can actually not only just have intellectual property, but we can start learning from each other's designs and do tracked improvement for distributed, basically a distributed approach to it. Economic diversification, so there was reduced dependence on manufacturing. I think we could have a reduced dependence on shipping of foreign goods in a new post-industrial economy. So growth across various non-manufacturing sectors. I would like to see more growth in community level independence. And then for environmental and sustainability focus, there's emphasis on a green economy in traditional post-industrial. But really what it does is it really just kind of takes all of our manufacturing, it pushes it somewhere else in the world. We're all breathing the same air. So I'd like to refocus that on reducing shipping and offshoring to try to make more localized manufacturing. So again, they were saying that there's a strong focus on going green in post-industrial. Well, I like to actually look at what it means to go green, and offshoring really isn't going green per se. It's going green in your area, but it's not going green globally. Okay. All right, so I started off with a really simple graph, and then I'm going to explain this. I'm going to make it a little bit more complicated later on, and I hope I didn't make it too complicated. But so traditionally, let's say you have a need, you want a new couch, okay? You go find a solution, you go to like an IKEA, you buy the solution. So you take your little tag number, you go there, and then it gets shipped to you, okay? What I think you might be able to do in the future is you have a need, you want a new couch. So to find a solution, you put on a Vision Pro, or you go to your iPad and you find a digital little model. You go to a marketplace and you see what fits in there, okay? And then it gets, that model then goes to a local shop that then would have all the CNC prints, cuts, or whatever you would need for that. And it could then be made there. Now, I'll show you some advantages of that later, but basically, you know, the advantages of this would be we move from a throwaway culture to a maintain the goods culture. You know what I'm saying? And a focus on using the technology that we have to allow local craftsmen to come into play. Okay. I'm going to do 3 different examples here. So I'm going to do basically how it would work in industrial construction, how it would work in potentially industrial agriculture, and how it would work in industrial big box or home stores. Okay. All right. How basically this would work. Okay. So basically use the same tech that all the big people have been using, but you can use it now on a more localized network with networks. Okay. You keep track of all of the data and how these models were built, all the lessons learned on building them. You add those back to the model. Therefore, the next time you do it, you know how to do it better. You have local maintenance of the products, and then you give credit to the creators, the builders, the owners, and the maintainers. Okay? So as opposed to you just not knowing who built your couch, you know who the artist is, you know where the materials come from, you know who crafted it, and you know who can come and fix it later. Okay? Or change the fabric of it later. Whatever you need done. All right, this is the complicated graph that I was told I made too complicated. But basically, these are the stages. So there's design, build, maintain, okay? So this would be for industrial construction. I'll use this as an example. So we start with a site scan. So we go over it with a drone or a LiDAR, and we scan the whole site, okay? Then we post the site for basically options on a marketplace. So you create a design challenge for that site. Then we get, you know, different engineers, designers in there. They make a design challenge. Then you're allowed to visualize the data. So you make a digital twin. This can be then seen on augmented reality via a phone or a Vision Pro. You know, you get to see what you're looking at. Then you also get a budget and a plan. So you can afford this little concrete printed house or whatever it is that you want, because it has a detailed list of BOM, okay? And you can visualize the cost and see what you would want change, okay? Then it would go into the build. Next thing is the build. So basically, this then gets posted to a construction marketplace, and a lot of the tools that were meant to design go into essentially a CAM stage. So the 3D concrete printed, you would know what localized trades have what machines. They could then print these different things, these different concrete structures or whatever they are. You would know who has the tools and how much material they're going to use, and you would end up getting a time frame. Okay? Then it would go into a configure and program phase, where they go and they take that model, they hack it into their slicers or whatever they want. so that they can go and print it. So they define define their tools, define their timelines, define their cost constraints. Then you deploy the design. So you run the equipment, you manage the materials, you track the manpower, you maintain the equipment. And then I think the next thing that's very important is monitoring and tracking. So you monitor and you track weather data, the number of people used, etc., and you embed that into the design, whether that's with RFID tags, maybe it could be used blockchain technology, etc., basically embedding all of the parameters of that design directly into the model, okay? Reason for that is for maintenance later, so then we go on to the maintenance cycle, okay? So then the owner gives feedback of the design, so that could improve on the slicing manufacturing, could improve on anything in that section of the marketplace. You update the design, so you update the cost calculations, the accuracy of everything. Then you could potentially make that design now flexible in the marketplace. So as opposed to going out for basically a site, you could then scan the site and grab one of those previous models from the site, make a flexible design. Okay. Then you monitor and track. So this is where those tags come into play. So as the building starts to erode, you start to figure out why the building is eroding, how it's being patched up in one area versus another area, what could be done better and worse about those patch ups. That way, as the system's maintained for a longer period of time, we have good fix plans and we design better and better over and over again, not just individually on one construction site, but as a group, as a whole. Okay? And then you go into the maintenance step like we talked about. So this is how it would be done in industrial construction. What's nice is if you look at something like how you would do it for furniture, right? You can do the same thing. So you basically scan the site via, whatever, Apple Vision Pro, a phone or whatever. You post it to, if you have a lot of money, you post it to a design house, interior design house, or you just pick items from the marketplace that you want in there, right? They would already be in there. You're able to then visualize the design, change the materials, whatever you want for that said item or said space that you want to work with. You get an automatic budget and plan of time for manufacture, right? Then you post that up to the different fabricators because one shop might be full. You might want to pay more for it to be done quicker. One shop might have a certain fabric, wood type, whatever, you know. So you post it to a marketplace and you know who's able to fabricate it in your local area. They go and they configure and program their machines. They run them overnight. Then basically they deploy the design, they fit everything together, and they monitor and track it. So monitor and tracking there means they tag all the materials, they tag what skilled craftsmen actually worked on it, so people take ownership of the task that they did. So then, then when you get your product, you actually know who put it together, you know who designed it, and you know who can maintain it. Okay. From there, the owner then gives feedback the same way they did in the previous step. The model is then updated, made flexible, so maybe you want the couch stretched or shortened for future users. You post it in the marketplace, you monitor and track it, and you maintain it, right? So we can use this example again for industrial agriculture. So let's say we have a small farm site, okay? Again, we can run a drone, and you can run multispectral on it, which would give you basically what can grow there. It would give you basically what types of fertilizer, how well the area is going to be done, plus temperature data. You could post it for different options of what should be there, what's needed in the market. Okay. You could visualize it, so you could see how many different crop areas are going to be there. That would help you figure out how to farm it. Okay. And then you'd have a budget and a plan, so how much it's going to cost you to fertilize it, water it, etc. And you'd have a budget and a plan before you go in and you go to the next phase, right? So now you're essentially kind of posting it on a marketplace, so you got to figure out who's going to come in and help you with the labor, who's going to help come in and farm it, etc., who you're going to buy the fertilizers from. You configure and you program it, okay, so GPS harvesters, etc., stuff like that. And now you deploy your design, so you start running these fertilizers, you keep on running drones over it to see how well this agriculture is doing in this given area. This gives feedback to the bigger circle to figure out what else you should crop, how far you should be on the outskirts, what else you need to be done. Okay, you monitor and you track it. So now you know. So each apple or whatever this is, you know who grew it. You know what fertilizers were on it. and you have all that information embedded into this product that you're getting. And also by doing this on a larger scale, you know what's needed in the marketplace. So we don't need big aggro. We can go with smaller aggro because you'll know what's in the marketplace and available. So who needs what where, and whether that fits within the conditions of the land that you have. Okay? The owner then gives feedback on how well his crop did, whether he yielded a profit, why he didn't yield a profit. It goes and helps everybody else out. Gets updated, it goes back into this flexible marketplace, you monitor and track it, and then you maintain the cycle, right? So, this is basically a concept of how we can take and go from big industry to post-industry with all the technology and tools we have, okay?
Go ahead. I help my parents run an orchard.
Yeah.
This is capital intensive. Like
it's not anymore though. Like to be frank, so I run drones for large industrial sites, and drones for large industrial sites now are down to $12,000 maybe. And if you start running them in a community, you can keep these things in the air for hours a day. You could almost maintain a whole county region with one drone and one pilot. So it sounds like it's capital intensive, but it's only because the cost of the technology is getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, and the value that you can get out of the technology is bigger and bigger and bigger. So it sounds like it's a bit capital intensive now, but it's just because it's not being done on a larger scale, which I kind of get to a little.
Well, you said like the drone's $12,000, and I think the most. Well, don't repeat this.
I get it, but your drone time would be 1 hour for every month. Is basically what I would be saying for this monitoring.
You wouldn't have to buy a drone.
Yeah, you wouldn't have to buy a drone, right? He would fly your orchard and every other orchard. He'd fly 30 orchards, right? So $15,000. The drone lasts, at least 3 years. So that's $5,000. He's flying 30 orchards. The cost of it becomes.
I don't want to derail your topic,
Yeah.
but I guess I'm talking in terms of like, you have a lot of interesting things poking at your ability to like cleanly scan over a custom local orchard.
Yep.
If you're at industrial scale agriculture, you just modify the land to make it more legible.
It's true. So there's different ways of doing that. So I'm talking about multispectral here. You can also do it with LiDAR. Again, I'm not saying this works for absolutely everything. I'm basically posing a concept of going and using large industrial tools on smaller sites now that they're becoming cheaper to make smaller sites more efficient. And to be frank, I think people that are doing this, are attempting to do this, are actually showing a lot of profitability because they're realizing how they could fertilize better, where their fringe problems are and stuff like that with using data, because you can use AI detection on stuff like this. And I bet you with some AI detection on an apple orchard, I bet you could do a rough count of how many apples there are on every tree.
I think you could also design like a permaculture approach.
Yeah.
Where you're saying, here we're going to do this, and here we're going to do this, and this will fit with this, and we have the terrain, and you'd have the information.
Exactly. The more and more information, this doesn't really work on a one-person system. That's the thing, right? So you do need a big network, which again goes back into capitalist models, but which is a flaw in this system. You know what I'm saying? It's like whoever is the owner of the GitHub owns all the data. So there is a problem with it, but at the same time, it solves a lot of small solutions, right? So once it's not only your orchard in there, it's everybody's orchard in there, and they're all working on what can do better and worse for their designs. Once all of that information is there, probably everybody can prosper from each other's information.
Well, no, because again, like, tell me if I'm dragging things too far off.
No, it's fine.
Make it just about apples. Apples are very close to my heart. Grandfather did apples in Yakima.
I love apples too.
I love apples now.
We just went out picking last week.
If you're in Maryland, talk to me.
Yeah.
But like, one of the biggest apple growing regions is Yakima Valley in Washington, Eastern Washington, because it's desert, and it's a case where it's like, to me, the gradient here seems like, well, actually, let's pick a desert. We'll irrigate. We'll control the level of water. We will instead of doing like more traditional, more disease-resistant trees, we'll actually like modify the trees so heavily we're just going to trellis them across fences like grapes.
Yep.
And all of this seems like a gradient in the direction of like, well, actually now it's even more capital intensive to set these up.
I agree. Like, and what this is trying to do is try to make it such that large scale or small scale farmers get the advantage that large scale farmers do with information, so that we don't have to disrupt things so much, and we can figure out that cost buyback plan better. You know what I'm saying? So is there certain types of apples that aren't on the market in this marketplace? How could you grow those? Are they effective in your area, so that small people can specialize on different things to fulfill a market need that they didn't even know was there? You know what I'm saying? Again, agriculture was a bit of a step out of the other types of manufacturing, so I don't want to get too hung up on it. I almost took agriculture out. I was told I should take agriculture out because it was a bit of a leap, but I kept it in there just because I wanted to show that the same steps are probably applicable for a lot of types of large manufacturing, not manufacturing industry. And you could take this approach to lots of different styles of industry. That's why I kept agro in there. It's not really manufacturing, but it is. It isn't. Anyways. I'll keep going, and if you have other questions, I do have some other stuff. So yeah, I guess I'm leaving these as semi-open talks. I'm just going to talk about a little bit, but these are some of the enablers. There's about 7 slides of these of what's allowing this to happen. Okay, and it's basically the cheapening of automation and robotics, the advancements in 3D and additive printing, okay, and artificial intelligence and adaptive CAD modeling. So, when you make a model, it can instantly go from CAD to CAM, depending on different CAM systems that you have available, okay? Again, if you want to talk about any of these, we can, or I can just breeze through them and get to them later, okay? So I think we need to emphasize on research and development, okay? So we need innovation hubs like I3 or other innovation hubs. And we need to do more collaboration with academia. So, I think a lot of this stuff needs academia to put some of this stuff in place so that it's cheaper for everybody else. So I think we should really focus on principles of circular economy. So again, going back to the furniture and disposable way that we deal with life today, we do that because of offshoring. I think if we onshored and really cared about our products and knew how to maintain them, there would be a much better circular economy. Energy efficiency, again, you think you're going green, but really you're just dispersing carbon. So energy efficiency here, you'd reduce a lot of shipping, and you're shipping a lot of weight, air in a lot of cases. With some of these, you could really reduce the shipping, because you could bring these apple orchards to the extent that apple orchards could grow out, as opposed to shipping apples over a larger distance. Again, apples only have a certain bandwidth, right? But as you start to try to spread things out as opposed to driving things around, again, I don't want to fully focus on agriculture, you could potentially reduce carbon, okay, save energy, and rely on the network, although AI also consumes a lot of power. Okay, so again, you need education and training, you need some reskilling, but I think it's also important that we can actually start to enable people to just do local crafts and really just work with their hands. A lot of people want to do that. I know I want to do that in a lot of cases, and I do engineering all day, and I find nothing better than spinning a wrench every once in a while. It's soothing as hell for me. I think there's a lot of people that just don't know how to do that and make it valuable. And I think if you could provide a tool or a craft like this and a platform like this, people would want to do it. So you're going to leverage on digital transformation, which is the Internet of Things, right? So basically, a product then can go and actually get cut overnight somewhere without anybody really interfering too much if the network's set up correctly. Digital twinning, so I talked a little bit about digital twinning, but digital twinning in the home construction aspect even would be a full real digital twin. So you'd see how much it was supposed to consume with energy, for example, for HVAC, heating, cooling, lighting, etc. You would set that digital twin up, you'd monitor the real house, and you'd see where the differences are in the two models. Maybe you need to add some insulation. Maybe you need to point the position of the house to improve lighting parameters so that you don't have so many lights on, etc. So really keeping that digital twin and comparing it to the data feedback that you're getting. Same thing goes for crops, same thing goes for furniture. So really keeping those physical things and those digital things in check, so that digital things can be improved and remanufactured. I think it's very important. And again, this comes down to keeping things in a cloud platform or computing them in the cloud. Okay, what else we would need to do this? Okay, so we need some support for small and medium-sized enterprises. So we need to support our small and medium-sized businesses in doing this. We need to innovate our networks and to create a platform like this that would work. We would need to actually encourage localized funding. So when we rebuild a sidewalk project or something like that, we want to put some concrete printed bus stops there, or try to get local craftsmen to get involved in all of these community projects if they want to be involved. The money's going to get spent either way. Might as well start improving people's hands-on technology and local fabrication. And focus on getting education to focus on small, cheap tools as opposed to just hire big thoughts. Okay. And then we want to foster global competitiveness, so we want to basically export these designs, right? So we're going to be making a whole bunch of these designs. These designs then get tagged with the artist, right? This artist could go from making a couch, you don't know what artist made your couch. This couch could then be made all over the world, and that could end up, that money could go back to the artist. You know what I'm saying? We will need to set up global compliance standards, so a lot of this comes down to basically, how you print concrete to make sure it structurally works. So you need some ASTM standards across all of this. Same thing with fabric, same thing with furniture design. We don't want people to get hurt. So you need to set up global standards to make all this work. And, some trade policies, making sure that people just don't steal all the stuff that we put out there. So what this does is it ends up strengthening the supply chain. It makes it more resilient because you know where everything that you're getting is. Okay. You potentially use blockchain, so when you pass your piece of furniture off, you know who previously owned it. You know the conditions that went into it. You know the craftsman that made it, etc. So as this piece progresses, more information gets added to it, none gets removed from it. Right. We need to set up marketplaces that work both from the design aspect and from the fabrication aspect, and how that would work in our economy. And then we would want to have flexible designs for different shops, based on what tools they have. So basically, we would want some of our taxpayer dollars to start going, as opposed to large corporations that are doing most of the stuff, even trickling off a small aspect of it into small creators, in a post-industrial society. So there's a lot of government money that goes to a lot of different government objectives, but usually it only goes to large corporations. If we can sped up some of these smaller marketplaces, maybe we could start trickling this money down into empowering our people right here locally. Agile form, you're thinking regulatory framework. Yeah, so basically we don't have a lot of good regulatory policy on this. So concrete printing, all of this stuff, we don't have regulations, so that's why it doesn't work very well. So large construction goes to large regulations. We don't have a lot of automated regulation right now. That's why a lot of people are scared to do it, and a lot of cities don't accept it. Data security and privacy. Okay, so this is my optimistic future potentially. So some of these are a little loose. Again, I made this thing in like 2 or 3 hours, so cut me a little bit of slack. But there's pre-industrial, industrial, post-industrial, and post-industrial 2.0. So market size and general focus. Pre-industrial focused mostly locally. Industrial focused mostly countrywide and exporting. Post-industrial focused mostly worldwide and importing. And post-industrial 2.0 could be local to global, right? General market workforce. So pre-industrial is mostly your family. Industrial, it's usually top management and local labor. Post-industrial, we have top movers and shakers and top talent in the house. Everything else is outsourced, right? And to cheap talents. In post-industrial 2.0, we can have both top talents in design, top talents in craftsmen, all working together to create an industry. Desired jobs. Pre-industry would have been craftsman. Industrial would have been a manager. Post-industrial would be a capitalist. Post-industrial 2.2 would be craftsmen and tradesmen. Maybe not good for large CEOs, because you can manage smaller workforces as opposed to managing large organizations that have to do this. Crush an IKEA. General politics. So in pre-industrial, I think a lot of it, there wasn't a lot of lobbying. It was on a local level. Industrial, it was capitalized democracy. Post-industrial is democratized capitalism, in my opinion. Post-industrial 2.0, I think you can democratize both ideas and manufacturing. I know that might get some negative feedback later, but global impact. So pre-industrial is local impact, not global impact. Industrial is local impact and with heavy local impact and local impact on feedstocks. Post-industrial is huge impact on the world, but none in the local area. And post-industrial 2.0 is an optimized measure of impact. So we can actually measure all of the impact that's happening because we know where our feedstocks are coming from, where everything's going. So we can actually measure what the impact is across the board, right? How do people fit in the different cultures? Pre-industrially, they fit in as family. Industrial, it's capitalist, banks, and unions. Post-industrial, it's banks, capitalists, and tourism. And post-industrial 2.0, I think person can find a way to fit in wherever he feels he needs to fit in, whether he fits in as a designer, craftsman, or somewhere in between, material provider, etc. Why we would move in this direction? I think it adds strength to local markets, keeps the country sustainable as a whole. So I think ideally right now we have a big tech fantasy thing, so I think tech people would want to get on board with this because he who controls the data has the power. Data is the new diesel. So I think somebody would probably want to jump on board with this. You go green, less shipping of empty weight, more focus on ideas, saves petrol. Manufacturing technology is becoming more increasingly affordable. AR/VR standards are easier. A lot of people are going to want to shop on their Vision Pros. Everybody wants to go into this digital world. Probably people want to do that versus going to IKEA. People are less social these days. People are looking for purpose. This might give people a sense of purpose. And there's decreased cost in all of the things that I'm talking about, like a Maslow, Persa printer, drones like DJI. All this, the barriers to entry are becoming a lot lower. And these tools, when you buy them, you can use them a lot, and you can probably make money while you're not really doing much except for letting these tools work. Okay. Potential pushbacks. Well, we live in a giant capitalist system. If we can't find an easy way for one big shot to make money off this, it's very hard for somebody to want to push this idea. Who would want to push it? There's probably a lack of interest in a lot of people doing creative work. A lot of people are focused on consumerism versus manufacturing. TikTok people want to show off what bag they bought, not how they made a bag. Typically, we live in a consumeristic world, and I think making stuff makes people look like nerds sometimes, as opposed to being proud of what they're making. In our today's culture. Also small scale and localized business like this, so it's small scale and localized versus corporations. There's a potential for exchange without taxations. So government could maybe have a problem with this. I could start trading goods on marketplaces for other goods without being a corporation. Well, I don't think the government would like that too much, potentially. What can we do to actually go if you want to do it? So I would say let's fucking go and build shit. Be proud of what you make. Making stuff from a grassroots level is really what could start driving this. You could connect with local educational public works institutes. A lot of these places buy stuff all the time. They're buying chairs for like $250 to $400 on average. They buy a ton of it. Even if you can make just a couple local accent pieces, a lot of people can make a chair for $400 easy enough these days. And it would be cool, creative, and local. Don't be afraid to build stuff for your friends and neighbors. Show them how easy it is. Ask them what they would like improved. Show them that the designs can be flexible. Get your hands dirty. If you don't have tools, a lot of people have tools sitting around just collecting dust. A lot of people are trying to do this and just don't have the help either. So, if you take interest in stuff like this, I bet you could find stuff that's just sitting around and people do it for free. If your orchard was close enough, I'd scan it for you. And then stop worrying about where you're going to fit. Stop worrying about someone, start worrying about doing something. So stop worrying about where you're going to fit in the post-industrial economy, start figuring out what you want to do. So if you figure out what you want to do in the post-industrial economy, maybe we can bend it. Okay? I think. Oh yeah. Thanks and questions. So basically, I don't know. This is the first time doing this. I made this in like 2 or 3 hours, so I don't really know what I was supposed to be doing. Should I have given more examples on companies? So there's Labacrete. That's actually a concrete printing place that actually follows ASTM standards. There's a Detroit concrete printing place that's called Citizens Robotics. It's actually not far from here. There's some how to manage and scan data. There's some information on Leica. I use some Leica products. I have some CNC Maslow stuff. And Meshi is pretty cool. So I also took this speech, I threw it into AI and prompted AI to make me a monument, and then I printed it. So I got AI to take my lecture, simplize it into basically a Soviet monument, and this is what Industry 2.0 would look like in artificial intelligence views. So I just sent that to a printer overnight. So this is an example of how we can leverage technology to be creative and make something on the spot. I made this presentation yesterday. I took this out of the oven this morning. So yeah, so this is how we could leverage that technology, and I can show you the actual model. It's a 3D model, but yeah, AI just made a model based off what my speech was. So I just fed my PowerPoint into AI, and it spit out a model of what it thought I was trying to say in a Soviet style statue. I didn't deburr this one. I thought it was kind of cooler just being off the form labs. So that's that. Question. Did I do this too fast or too slow? I probably did it too fast.
I mean, maybe a little fast, but it's cool.
Yeah. How much time did it take?
35 minutes.
35 minutes? Okay, I should have slowed it down a bit. Yeah, I can show you the 3D model if you want. I got it here. So, let's see. I think I got the 3D model up here. And I can show you the actual print time. So it took about 2.5 hours to print. This is the 3D model. Oh, come on. It doesn't want to work right now. So yeah, anyways, this is the 3D model. This is the 3D model. It was set in my printer tray. So.
I assume your slicer added the supports. Or
Yeah, my slicer added the sports. Yeah, they.
About the supports.
Huh? Yeah, here. Well,
No, oh, is this sans? No, this is with supports.
yeah, that's with sports.
We've
Yeah.
seen a model without supports.
Yeah. Let me grab the model without supports. I can just take the model and move it. Oh, if I rotate the model, we'll be able to leave this.
No,
one.
yeah.
Yeah. And I can show it to you textured in too if you want. I don't know. I might need to reload my machine here, but I'm not connected to the internet. That's why. Yeah. Do we know what the Wi-Fi is? Anyways, I could show you the model actually textured too if you want.
Actually, I didn't want to see
So,
it. Yeah.
so that's the model without supports. But you want to see it textured?
I would like to see it.
Yeah, sure. Do you know the Wi-Fi password?
It's upstairs, I don't know.
Yeah, if you give me the Wi-Fi password, I can show it to you textured.
So you I'd heard about this. I've never seen it. So this is you prompted a generative model.
I prompted a generative model today. Yeah, I prompted a generative model. So yeah, it does a lot. There's a lot of different mice. So there's about 3 or 4 different model types out there. The first one was actually from OpenAI. I think it's called Plan B or something like that, or Point E. So Point E was one of the first ones. So what it does is it basically is like a generative model of pictures. And then what it does is it finds rotating versions of those pictures, makes a point cloud, and then meshes them. So that's kind of how it works. So it uses the AI that you would use to generate a picture. It would then take that picture. Here you go. Thanks, babe.
Yeah.
So it would then take that picture and then rotate it. You got it? What is it?
So if you don't mind, can I skip over the part where I nod my head and say how much I like this and go straight to disagree?
Yeah. No, there's tons of points to disagree. Actually, I already disagree with a lot of this stuff anyway. So keep going.
Like, I don't want it to be like.
No. I there's lots of points to disagree on. I wonder if you have the same ones as me. So let's go. Let's go for the disagreements. I'll show you the model too. But yeah.
So I think part that stuck out in my head as I mean, like, a lot of cool visions have like, contradictory things poking at each other.
Yeah.
You describe tagging like the design of a couch, which I think is very cool. Like, I'm going to use the couch as an example.
Yeah.
So you make a really cool couch.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's clear. Like, you open source this model, or like you.
Yeah. Basically, you post it on Marketplace, kind of like an Etsy.
Yeah.
Kind of like an Etsy, but an improved version of Etsy.
So
Yeah.
like, I guess the tension that I see here is we have a very nice thing going of like, oh, well, like the model's open, you can modify it, you can manufacture it locally, and then this seems to be in conflict with, like, well, I look at a lot of very successful manufacturing businesses, and they seem to be running off of, I'm not going to call it intellectual property, a lot of times just trade secrets.
Yeah.
So we seem to have a tension here, kind of like, well, if we do this, where we can tag this, we have an open model, and we have a locally manufacturable version of it, this seems like it's kind of more like, well, yeah, I mean, so to some extent, a more traditional way of doing this is you collect the secrecy rent on whatever your cool design is.
Yeah, that's the idea. Yeah, you're basically having the artist, because the artist is making the cut patterns and stuff, right? And then he's recommending fabrics and stuff. So you're giving a certain amount of money basically to the artist. You're giving a certain amount of money to the material providers, or amount to the craftsman.
But what if I take that model and I modify it? Now am I getting the money?
Well, yeah, potentially. I mean, there's stuff to work out with that, but there's stuff to work out with that in every design, right? So, yeah, I definitely didn't think this whole thing through again.
No, it's really a lot of stimulating ideas, and I think that's the tension between being able to share and have and have better designs.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
also to have incentive for people to create design.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the point, and I don't know exactly how to do that. I mean, it's done in open source communities all the time just to better everybody's life, right? So I think a lot of it would be done something like that. I mean,
So I'll push back that against that a little, because I love open source. I use it all the time. And then, have you read Commoditize Your Complement?
No.
Oh, so one of the, I'm not pretending this is the only reason, but a very popular essay was, the reason open source software gets as much funding as they do, and as much support as they do, is because some other business is saying, oh, this is a complement to what we're doing. We're gonna commoditize it, drive the marginal cost down to near zero. The traditional example here is oh, hey, if we make the browser free, that's great for our web server business.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. I think Paul Graham had his own version of this, which is create a moat of unprofitability around you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as much as I like all of these ideas, I'm just kind of I think you're gonna keep seeing that pop back up. Maybe it'll be the moat of unprofitability around whoever creates a feedstock.
Yeah, no, I know somebody's going to make a lot of money off potentially doing this, and it probably is going to be. I mean, I see this kind of is like an Uber model, unfortunately, where some people want to be Uber drivers just because it gives them something easy to do on an app. So some people just like doing it, but then unfortunately everybody gets screwed by the system behind it. You know what I'm saying? So it could the networks themselves or the marketplace themselves could actually take over all the power, which is really sad because that's not what I wanted to do in this presentation. What I really wanted to do is, it only costs about $500 to have a Maslow CNC, and you run that thing all night. You can build almost anything given the models there, and now you can have local people. I actually like making furniture too. I find it quite enjoyable. If I had all the models to make furniture, I could make furniture on my spare time. Me doing all of the steps at the same time makes it a little bit too hard for me to do it. I can't just set up a machine overnight and just build something the next day. You know what I'm saying? So trying to get that ease of use to come into play, and then use some of these cheap tools that are available, I think we can start to not offshore. You know what I'm saying? Will somebody profit off this? Is it a perfect concept? Absolutely not.
Because I think along these lines, another thought I had that I love CNC manufacturing, but at the same time cool, we made the supply chain more local, and then we added this new really long tail dependency on computer chips, and 3 companies in the world can make modern chips.
Right, exactly. Yeah. In a lot of these cases, you don't need much computing power because it's in the cloud, but in the cloud, that's still a capitalist market of all of the data in the cloud. So the processing power of a lot of this stuff that I'm doing is not being done locally. The CAD stuff is, but the rest.
It's not like it would be done locally in any event, though.
It wouldn't be done locally. Some of the slicers have to be done locally. A lot of that is processed on your PC, but in most cases, it's processed remotely. Yeah.
Have you heard of the book Reinventing Organizations?
No, I think I've heard of the book. I haven't read it though.
Yeah, so that has to do with organizational design or new organizations that are emerging, and it's based on Ken Wilber's integral theory, and portions that were derived from spiral dynamics. But there are organizations that work radically differently, and I don't know how that fits into this, but I suggest looking at that because it's a way of decentralizing. These organizations are
Is this resin?
Yes.
I'm gonna wash my hands.
Oh, I did bake it, so it should be almost okay. Maybe I didn't bake it for long enough. I baked it yesterday, so it should be okay. It's still a little sticky. Sorry.
Yeah,
I should have baked it more. I printed it yesterday and baked it.
I don't expect this to be a problem.
It's draft resin. Yeah.
But there are organizations that are, radically decentralized to the point where the CEO works 2 hours a week.
Oh yeah, I think I actually have heard of that.
Decision making is not based on authority and hierarchy. It's
This
based.
is the colored organizations, right? Like yellow and blue and
Yeah, so that's from Spiral Dynamics, and then Ken Wilber renamed it, or selected different colors. But that is based on this idea of different stages of evolution of consciousness, which can be
Yeah.
for individuals as well as for society.
Different levels
yeah.
of dependence on hierarchy, and I guess centralized decision making, kind of, sort of.
That fits in there,
Yeah.
so having, yeah, decentralized decision-making, but also this idea of what stage we're at, like, you know, if we're in an industrial stage, we get all sorts of, you know, modernism gives us medicine that does wonderful things, it gives us, you know, the ability to create things, you know, factories, but then also like pollutes the planet, right?
Right.
It has this dark side, but then you have postmodernism, and then now we're gonna care about the economy and all of that, but then you get kind of a weird, it has its own dark side, which can have weird, and so every one of these stages has benefits and has a dark side and incorporates the previous stage, although people at a given stage don't want to acknowledge that. Like they kind of think their stage is the only stage.
Right.
There are lots of interesting ideas in that. I think that might fit in with this.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think I'm trying. What I'm trying to propose here is basically a different way of deindustrializing, right? Not doing it the way, you know, let's say it was before with offshoring and losing the middle class, you know, because essentially what I think the problem is of today is we're losing our middle class that has hands that want to work. You know what I'm saying? And you could potentially leverage technology to make things usable for everybody that wants to do anything, and they could feed back the information into this loop, benefiting the whole. You know, is it optimistic? It's overly optimistic, but it's an idea that I think is worth pursuing.
Mhm. I think the one way to go about it is to subvert the existing system.
Yeah.
Like, rather than opposing,
Yeah.
kind of subvert it. Like, again, there's issues with Uber, but it subverted, like it said,
Yeah.
you know, we're just gonna like slide in here.
Slide under the radar,
Yeah.
and once they slid in, it was hard to get them back out.
Right.
Yeah,
There's
so that's
other
true.
ways, you know, and like with people bartering, you know, and avoiding taxes that way locally, that's like subverting the system.
Yeah.
Right, it's like, we're not gonna do your government regulatory stuff, we're just gonna.
We're just gonna treat each other in a marketplace.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, no, I think this is a lofty idea. I was just throwing it out there as a thought experiment. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what will actually happen going forward, but I do think we have a lot of ability to start to work together locally, as opposed to potentially offshoring. Our technology is evolving and getting so cheap that I think we can take advantage of it.
I don't have a complete thesis here. I'm gonna throw another idea out that
Go
may
for
not.
it.
So I think about the
Neither did I, by
onshore.
the way.
I think about the onshoring argument, and I can think of one like group that has successfully onshored a bunch of like expensive, high-tech manufacturing capability, and they did it by vertically integrating. It's SpaceX and Tesla.
Yeah.
It's like the only story in like the past 2 decades.
I did work for both of them.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah.
Like, my thought here is like, if like, no, I might be wrong, there might be other cases. Like, the only cases I can think of like a high-tech supply chain being onshored to the U.S. again is actually.
I'm not thinking about a high-tech supply chain, though. I'm literally talking about making furniture locally. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm talking about something that local craftsmen can do with relatively cheap things, probably at the same price that it takes to ship it overall. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not necessarily talking about high-tech things. I'm talking about using small, cheap CNCs and stuff to start making more local crafts easier to have at the same cost it would cost to ship. You know what I'm saying? So
And you have an information system.
An information
that ties
system that ties it together.
Whereas previously you couldn't add that.
Exactly. And previously the CNCs were too expensive, and there was no information system, and there was no way to credit the designer. So it was just cheaper to buy things overseas. I think if we can create some of these middle systems, it's not about high tech moving in, it's actually some of the low tech jobs moving back in.
Okay, we are at time.
Perfect.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.